Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this special meeting of the local police and fire scrutiny panel. I would like to welcome various guests today, and I'll do that specifically in a minute. Before we opening, I've got a statement to make. Welcome to this meeting. This meeting is being held remotely and also in person, and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with the Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Lindsay, do we have any apologies?
Apologies from Councillor Brennan, Councillor McCabe substituting, Councillor Maguire, Councillor Cassidy substituting, Councillor Moran with Councillor McCluskey substituting, and Councillor Daisley with Councillor Roberts substituting. The Bureau will now move to a roll call. Following members, please indicate if they are present at the meeting either in person or remotely.
Well, I hope he's better after that.
Councillor Cassidy.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Fogarty.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Crowther.
Present remotely.
Councillor Law.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCabe.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCluskey.
Present in the chamber.
Roberts Mackenzie.
In the chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
And Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. We have, sorry.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Thank you. We have guests here today. David McCarry from Fire and Rescue has come in remotely. He wanted to observe the proceedings, which I really do appreciate. From Police Scotland, we have Chief Superintendent Gordon McCready, Superintendent Richie Banks, Chief Inspector Damien Kane, from the Estates Department of Police Scotland, Alan Harris, and Davina Faraday, who is a resource manager. Welcome, everybody. We're here today to consider Police Scotland Estate Strategy consultations. The recommendations that we are asked to approve today are at 2.1. Panel is asked to agree the proposed response to 1, the national consultation on the Police Scotland estate, the local consultation on the Port Glasgow Police Station, and 3, the local consultation on the Greenock Police Station. Ruth, would you like to commence proceedings? Thank you.
Yes, so to introduce the papers. So this is as the convener said, the 3 public consultations. So the national consultation, which was launched on the 14th of December 2023 and closes on the 31st of July. The Port Glasgow Police Station, which opened on the 21st of December 2023 and closes on the 18th of February. And the Greenock Police Station, which closes on the 21st of, which opened on the 21st of December and closes on the 31st of March. Perhaps a wee bit of background to the process that has led to the proposed consultation responses. We've had briefings not only from the police but elected member briefings from officers. There has been some changes in the dates, not only when the information was available on the police website, but also the closing dates of the consultation. And some of the responses you will see feel that we don't have enough information available to date to be able to give an initial response. And you will see that in the narrative of the responses. Nothing further to add.
Thank you very much. Chief Superintendent Gordon McCready has asked if you could make a statement, and the floor is yours, Chief Superintendent.
Thank you. So good morning. First and foremost, I know we have important estates matters to discuss, but this is the first time I've appeared before the committee since the new year, so I'd just like to wish all members of the committee a happy and prosperous new year. And if you might indulge me as well, I would just like to take the opportunity to thank publicly the officers and staff in Police Scotland and in the other emergency services who sacrificed their festive period in order to keep the communities of Inverclyde safe. And I think the committee would support and endorse that comment. In relation to the estates, which is the core matter we're here to discuss, I want to cover the consultation on the proposed disposal and relocation of Greenock Police Station and the sale of Port Glasgow Police Station, which is currently unoccupied and has been unused since 2014. Given the importance of this discussion to communities of Inverclyde, as well as to the officers and staff within Police Scotland who work locally, before I take questions, I thank the committee for allowing me to cover a number of points which I think are important to ensuring that anybody who is here today, watching the session live or listening to it retrospectively, are properly informed. And as the relocation of Greenock Police Station is the most controversial of the two matters, that is the issue that I will focus on today. The 4 key points that I intend covering are the need for change. So what are the reasons and rationale behind the proposals? And that's an important aspect of your considerations. What the future might look like for the communities of Inverclyde in respect of any future police station if we were to proceed, including the scale and scope of the service provision, which I know is an important facet of conversations. Some of the matters we will still require to work through because this is very much the start of the process for us. If we were to close the existing station and move to a local site, these matters would require to be worked through, and I'll cover them shortly. As I reiterated to you personally at the last panel, I will give frank and honest opinion in my capacity as the Divisional Commander for Renfrewshire and Inverclyde. It's my responsibility to deliver the strongest possible policing service for the communities with the resources and assets made available to me by the Chief Constable. To ensure the committee have got access to appropriate information, as you covered, Chair, we have the local area commander who's well versed in matters of importance to the community, Damien Kane. We have Davina Faraday, who's a research and insight manager for Police Scotland, who may be able to cover off some of the details around the consultation and the approach. And Alan, to my right, Alan Harris, is Police Scotland's Estates Change Manager for the West of Scotland. Now, estates modernisation is naturally an incredibly emotive subject, and I see that playing out. I recognise that any proposals to alter the way in which services are delivered are naturally considered with a degree of apprehension, and I know that these proposals have been viewed with some angst. I sense that both from personal feedback, having briefed elected members personally, having read in various articles and comments online, and heard it personally through other forums, that people's perception of the proposals do cause them angst, but at times what I have observed is that they are sometimes misinformed and often, on occasion, alarmist in nature. And I hope today that we'll be able to cover some of those aspects. I also see that the consultation responses to date, encouragingly, have been very positive for the local community, one of the strongest responses to the consultation that are in place, and I'm personally enthused by that because I do genuinely want a participative approach in this consultation. It's in my interest as a commander as well as the interests of the community and the staff that work for us. From the outset, Chair, I've sought to ensure that local representatives have had accurate information. The announcement was first made, I think, on the 14th of December, and on the Monday we had a drop-in session where all councillors, MSPs and MPs were invited. I chaired that session personally. And the purpose of the session was really to start the conversation, as well as to take questions in an open, honest, confidential forum, but with such a large number of people there, I think we could all agree it was an open and honest forum. I'm pleased the meeting was well attended by many members, some of who sit on this committee. I've also had a number of other discussions with elected members and representatives in other forums, all with the sole purpose of having a productive communication on this matter. Whilst it might be of less relevance to this committee, it's naturally of relevance to me. I hope to assure you that I have adopted the same approach with our officers and staff internally, holding drop-in sessions, speaking personally to officers at all of our stations across the division, and encouraging them to have their voices heard by participating in the consultation as members of the community, as people who are serving the communities of Inverclyde. So I genuinely welcome the opportunity to present to the committee on this matter and by proxy to the public, because ensuring we have accurate information will ensure we get a more meaningful response to the consultation, as opposed to being driven by emotive and at times misinformed perceptions. So, what is the need for change? Now, many of you have been in the police station, you will have seen it with your own eyes, but let me address it exactly. Why are we looking to close Greenock Police Station, and we want to discuss that in order to relocate to another police station in the locality? So Greenock Police Station was opened in 1975, and I don't intend to give you a history lecture of your own community, but it was opened in 1975 due to the Renfrew and Boot Constabulary was being subsumed into Strathclyde as part of regionalisation. That might give you a sense of the age of the building as it approaches its 50th year. At the time, it was undoubtedly considered state of the art. I have the Chief Constable's first report from 1975 in my office, where it's heralded as a state of the art building, and it looks fantastic. Not so much today. The station itself undoubtedly serves Strathclyde Police well. However, in the 38 years under its care, there has been a lack of investment, and the site by its very nature is more exposed to the elements than any of the other sites in Scotland, I would argue. And as a result, in 2013, Police Scotland inherited a building which was outdated, approaching its 40th anniversary at the time, and in need of significant repair and no longer fit for purpose. In practical terms, though, you will appreciate that we require to maintain our legal and statutory obligations under the Health and Safety at Work Act, and it has been necessary for the police to spend money on maintaining the premises in a condition which is barely just acceptable. And I've just been across the road speaking to detectives who last week were working alongside water coming directly into the office through the windows and through the roof. I don't think anybody will contest the fact that the building is approaching end of life. Let me assure the committee there has been no major revamp, as I have seen suggested. The requirement to spend the money on such an old building is particularly the case around people who come into our custody, who are vulnerable, and rightly we are heavily scrutinised by external bodies and therefore have to meet our statutory obligations, and that comes at a cost. Given the age and condition of the building, unfortunately, it costs more to maintain that than it does a modern, well-designed, well-purpose building. In terms of the capital budget, first, I won't be drawn into discussions which have happened above my pay grade. The Chief Constable has openly stated, most recently at the Scottish Parliament Criminal Justice Committee, that the capital budget allocation for Scotland is amongst the lowest in the UK. It remains a challenge, therefore, to invest and transform our estates and other of our activities in order to provide our staff, the community, the public, the premises they deserve from a modern police service. In that vein, the building is no longer in keeping with the vision of a modern service, nor does it present an environment which is conducive to staff well-being or morale, with officers having to work amidst damp, dingy conditions. And I don't believe any member of this community or any member of this committee would want to work in such an environment, nor would they want our officers or staff to work in such an environment. In stark financial terms, the cost to address maintenance, categorised as priority one, immediate must do, is £2.5 million. Bringing the building, which is almost 50 years old, up to a modern standard would cost many more millions. So whilst you see £2.5 million in that consultation document, we are talking about the most essential of investment as opposed to any form of major revamp or luxury. Let me assure you there are no vanity projects over the road. It is not a pleasant working environment. The reality is we believe that money could be spent and invested far better in other sites than a new site. We believe the existing building is beyond economical repair and is now end of life, regardless of our collective emotional and historical attachment to it. So what does the future look like? And this is where I know members will be particularly interested. If we were to relocate to another site, I appreciate there has been significant discussion of what that might look like. So I want to set out in absolute clarity, the strongest possible terms, some of the facts for members and the public. Firstly, let me assure you and the public that consultation, should it lead to a decision to close the site, the station wouldn't be closed until a new site was up and running. We will maintain police presence within the community, regardless, until we identify a new site. The policing of Inverclyde will continue to be delivered from Inverclyde. I know there was a common perception at the start of this that policing would be delivered from some other location. I've heard it suggested Glasgow, etc. Perhaps we were unclear. But policing in Inverclyde will be delivered locally. In terms of our officer capability, whilst officers still undoubtedly need a police station to revert to, where they go back on occasion to take refreshment, to have a break, some downtime where it occasionally happens, we no longer engage the public routinely at the police station. We still have people engaged with us there, but the majority of our work is us going to officers. And the equipment officers now have and the technology enables them to stay in the communities for longer. But we still require a physical base. There is no two ways about it. I want to talk about also the counter provision. If we were to move to a new site, I can assure you there is no suggestion whatsoever that as a result of the estate's changes, that the current service with 24/7 cover would change. Whilst the vast majority of our engagement with the public is at their location and is initiated by them wanting to see us at their location, there is still a need to maintain a counter provision, in my opinion. Now, that might be for people who wish to call it the police station as a place of safety. It might be for those who are required by the court to report to the police station or as part of some other bail condition, or it may be for a range of other reasons. So I am absolutely clear. A public counter provision will be maintained, and my expectation is that that would be appropriately signed, visible and accessible to the public. Next, I want to talk about police resource levels. I have heard discussions and demands that there be no reduction in response community or CID officers at any new site. Genuinely, I'm not sure what are driving those suggestions. There is no agenda nor a proposal to reduce officers' numbers who serve in Inverclyde as a result of these estates discussions. None whatsoever. And as divisional commander, I would expect to know that. Should we conclude the current situation in the station is beyond economic repair, and that we do need to move to a new site locally, it be designed for the same number of officers and divisional staff who currently work at Greenock. Whilst numbers will always fluctuate with retirements, transfers, promotions, etc., to a degree, there is no focus on deliberately reducing officer numbers simply because we're consulting on moving sites. In terms of opportunities, a new site would offer us an opportunity to continue and enhance existing partnerships. So, for example, the CCTV suite, which is co-located with us currently, there would be an opportunity to perhaps co-locate going forward. There might be other opportunities around co-location, and we see good examples across Scotland, but that will require to be worked through in particular detail. And the last point, and I think the point at which members will be sitting and wanting to discuss most, and I do appreciate your forbearance in covering these important points, I want to touch on the custody provision. Greenock, as a police station, has cells at this location. And I'm going to cover in this final point some of the matters we need to work through should we decide to move sites after the consultation. So the custody provision at Greenock is a significant one. There are 57 cells. Not all are used at any one time, as you would appreciate. Members may recall also that my previous responsibility prior to applying for and being appointed to this division was actually the Divisional Commander for Criminal Justice Services Division. That is the division whose responsibility includes the provision of custodial services across Scotland. So therefore, I am well cited on what a modern custody facility looks like, what the demands are, what the risks are, and what the needs are across Scotland. I set out at the start of the session to say that I've been entirely candid with the committee, and I promise you that is the case. As the Divisional Commander for Renfrewshire and Inverclyde, previously Divisional Commander for Criminal Justice Services Division, I am of the opinion this division does require a cell provision, inappropriate travelling distance of Greenock to serve the communities. If we were to close the site with no alternative local provision, officers from Inverclyde would need to travel to custody centres in either Glasgow, Clydebank or Saltcoats, depending on the location of their arrest and demand at the time across the rest of the system. This would undoubtedly increase travel times. It would place more demand on those centres in Glasgow, Glasgow Saltcoats and Clydebank. It would increase waiting times for all officers, not just those in this division. And this is something which does not sit easily with me, nor does it sit well with the existing commander who replaced me in Criminal Justice Services Division. And I've already told members it is an area where we in Police Scotland, and in turn the Scottish Police Authority, who govern us as a service, will have to consider with forensic scrutiny before we proceed. There's a few key points I want to give you around the cells so that you are fully informed when considering your response, because there are naturally a number of assumptions out there which you don't need to know in honesty, but I think is important in this scenario. Firstly, the existing cells are dated. They do not or would not comply with modern standards expected of a new cell provision built today. As I've alluded to, we've had to spend some money on the cells simply to comply with our statutory and human rights obligations. The cells themselves are built on a number of levels, and I can assure you that having people in custody who are vulnerable, who are under the influence of drink or drugs, who may want to fight with the police, this is far from ideal. Until recently, officers were queuing on stairs with people in custody waiting to be processed, and it's something we acted on to give them a safe space to hold people to prevent anybody, whether it be officers or members of the public, coming to harm. Routinely, whilst we have 57 cells, the site is limited to an occupancy of 30 as a result of the demand profile and also the staffing profile in the Criminal Justice Services Division. The cells don't just serve Greenock, and again that might be a natural assumption that because they sit in Greenock, they are for Greenock. They are part of a national resource. They are the default custody provision also on occasion, but more often than not, for officers from Paisley. So Paisley officers travel up and down that road with people in custody. They are also used for people perhaps from Dunoon on occasion, or further afield, or we on occasion move people across the custody estate, particularly at weekends or public holidays for the courts, where we see an increase in demand because there's no court sitting on the next day, and we will move people from Glasgow to Greenock in order to create capacity, particularly if there are football or sport events or some other significant demand, which is likely to focus on Glasgow. So therefore, they are not solely used for the arrest made in Inverclyde, and again that might be the perception of many. People in custody are transported to local courts from Paisley, for example, to Paisley or Glasgow from Greenock on a daily basis and have been for many years. The building of new cells would come at a cost of tens of millions of pounds. So to put it in some perspective, the cell provision in Kitty Brewster in Aberdeen, built in 2014, I understand came at a cost of around £14 million. When you consider the capital allocation given to Police Scotland, that would be a significant chunk of that capital allocation if we were to apply current costs and standards. If we were to have the capital monies available, do we have appropriate land locally? Do we consider building a smaller number of cells using modular units, which are more affordable and routinely used in other parts of the country. And for absolute clarity, these are purpose-built, specifically designed modular units. They are not porta cabins. They are not something we throw up in a car park and someone would punch through, to be frank and honest. These are purpose-built facilities that are used in other parts of Scotland and other parts of the UK. It may come at a cheaper cost, but a more practical provision for local need. We'll need to work through all of that in great detail, and this is the start of the journey. As I move on to my final points, I guess, as the divisional commander for Renfrewshire and Inverclyde, if it were not financially viable to build a cell provision locally, my next consideration, and something I would advocate for, is to ensure there was no detriment to local policing. I would be looking to advocate for an increase in officer numbers to compensate for increased abstractions caused by travel, interviews, hospital escorts, observation duties. And again, that increase in officer numbers would need to be carefully considered and evaluated prior to implementation. I tell you that in my commitment to be open and honest, that if we cannot afford a cell provision, which I hope we can, and I hope will develop in time, as I've stated, we will have to put in place some other mitigation. So what next? In summary, I guess the proposals are being made to transfer local officers and divisional staff from one local building to another local building. That building would need to be visible, it would need to be accessible to the public. Any location is yet to be determined, if indeed we do proceed with the closure. The proposals and the matters to be worked through would provide consistency with the long-term estate vision. It would ensure visibility and presence, it would improve well-being, it would maintain or increase collaboration, it would deliver efficiencies and provide productive, modern, well-serviced workspaces. In terms of timescales, nothing happens quickly in this space due to governance, contractual arrangements, consultations. So there is no suggestion that we will be out in 6 to 9 months. With a strong wind behind us, I think optimistically we're looking at least 18 months to 2 years. So this is not something that's going to be knee-jerk nor fast, but of course that will remain subject to review. The proposals are not to withdraw policing services from local community, nor to reduce numbers of the number of front counter provision or the hours provided. The greatest challenge is naturally the provision of a custody centre within an appropriate proximity for Inverclyde. We will need to be careful around the planning of that if indeed it goes ahead, and we will need to ensure there is no local detriment. If that were not achievable, then mitigation would need to be put in place to ensure an appropriate local policing provision, and that is my role as Divisional Commander to advocate for that. With appropriate planning and implementations, officers would be just as active, visible and accessible, and the public would receive the same level of standard we receive currently. I hope this offers some assurance as the consultation concludes, and once we've assessed the feedback, we'll continue to engage and update members as I have done from the outset. I will continue to be open and honest about it, as I will in the questions. And whilst we're happy to take questions, my final ask would be to urge all members, any members of staff within the Police Service of Scotland who are watching, and all members of the community to engage with the consultation process. The Port Glasgow consultation, this process is open until the 18th of February, and the Greenock consultation is open until the 31st of March. And they're both available on the website. Chair, thank you for affording me some time to cover what I think are important points. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent. That was useful. Tell me, are your colleagues all available to answer questions?
I'll field them first if you don't mind, as Divisional Commander, and then as specialisms are required, I'll invite them if I may, Chair.
With our officers, Ruth Binks has got Ross Scullion and Hugh Scott available to answer questions on the paper. I open the meeting to my colleagues. Councillor McCabe, I wasn't going to miss you, don't worry.
Thanks, Convener. Your place. I mean, that was a very helpful presentation.
Yeah.
It doesn't change my mind in terms of recommendations in the report. I support the recommendations in the report in terms of the consultation response. And I fully understand the challenges that Police Scotland is facing in trying to modernise and rationalise your estate against very challenging financial background. Because we are facing exactly the same financial challenges, arguably possibly greater following the recent budget. We went through a school estate rationalisation, which our school estate's far bigger than the police estate, which involved very, very difficult decisions and unpopular decisions. We are currently in the midst of a review of our non-school estate, which may well result over the coming months, years, in very difficult decisions. So I don't think anybody sort of doesn't understand and sympathise with the challenges that you're facing. But I mean, my question for your presentation was actually going to be around the options appraisal, right? Because if you're making change, you have an option appraisal. You look at all the different options. Do nothing is an option. Is the base option a lot of people? Clearly, do nothing is not an option here. Another option for Greenup Police Station is the refurbishment and modernisation of the existing station, like reduce it in scale as well. There's obviously the other option is to rebuild somewhere else, or build in that site, temporarily relocate and demolish and build in that site, which is alluded to building in another site. Taking an existing building, renting it and converting it to use. The national strategy talks about co-location, and you've mentioned co-location this morning, and the vision of potentially, for example, the police and fire service coming together. But all of those require money, right? And you've absolutely alluded to the fact that there's not a lot of money floating about here. Police Scotland's capital funding is very restricted. The fire service's capital funding is very restricted. Our current capital funding is very restricted. So the question I'm left in my head this morning, and this is the start of the process and understand it, and when Police Scotland come to a conclusion on this matter, then obviously we would expect a report comes here and you come back here and explain how you've got to the decision you've got to. Because that's our role, is to scrutinise. We're not here as decision makers, we're here to scrutinise. But I'm left with the feeling here is, how can you possibly, at this point in time, with all those different unknowns, how can you possibly say Greenup Police Station is going to close, right? And that's the impression that we're under and the public are under, that police station might remain open for another couple of years, but at some point that police station is going to close and be demolished and cleared. How can you possibly say that without having went through a full options appraisal and come up with your alternative proposal, which is a better option than the option of refurbishing and modernising that building, which could indeed involve co-location of services as well. Potentially it's a big building, you don't need that building that size, etc. So I just don't know how you can say, right, the decision is we're closing Greenup Police Station, to come up with an alternative plan. To me, you have to come up with the alternative plan before you make a decision to close the police station. So has the decision been made that come what may, the existing police station is going to close? Or will the existing police station only close if you have a credible alternative plan that you can fund and deliver?
Chief Superintendent.
Short answer is yes. So you've covered off the options appraisal, all things that we will naturally consider. The site will not close until there is a credible, realistic option, which I'm content with as divisional commander, which we've presented to the committee. And you're right, the committee is not a decision-making body, but that is the purpose of the Police Scotland Senior Leadership Board, and also the important function of the Scottish Police Authority, who do govern us and are key decision makers in this space. So, whilst
Just go back to that.
if I may, Councillor, thank you. Whilst there is no decision to close the site, this is naturally part of the decision-making process, consultation, etc. But I don't think we would be kidding ourselves on. I'm looking at Alan to make sure I'm not saying anything untowards in terms of an estate space, which is his domain and not mine. The cost to redo that police station is so cost prohibitive, I understand, that it would be folly to invest the limited money we have in such a tight fiscal environment in upgrading something which will fail in years to come potentially. I think, one of the options is that we do invest for the future to give a modern, fit for purpose, easy to maintain site, which ensures the welfare of officers, ensures that services are delivered locally, perhaps co-located, and going through all of the considerations that you yourself have covered, which are natural and logical. So the short answer is we will not close the station until we're content there is a viable, fit for purpose proposal.
So just to follow that out, and I understand what you're saying in the buildings, but are you saying that the refurbishment of that building is absolutely ruled out, and that there has to be an alternative? Because you have to say, if I go back to our school estate strategy, we've successfully modernised schools that were built round about 1975. We've successfully modernised the schools that are probably 100 years old, right? And they are modern, fit for purpose schools for the 21st century. So I am struggling to understand how you can rule out categorically refurbishing that existing building without a full proper options appraisal to demonstrate to us, to the public, to the Police Scotland Board, that that is the right option. And so I'm struggling to understand how people can you can be so categorical that that building will not be refurbished.
Thank you, Chair.
Chief Superintendent?
I don't think we are saying that, so my apologies if it's been misinterpreted. That will naturally form part of the options appraisal, and there'll be a cost benefit analysis undertaken, etc. And appropriate estates considerations put in place. We're not saying, or I'm not saying, that building is absolutely end of life. But if we start to stack up the costs, and I alluded to earlier that the cost to build a new police station in Kitty Booster was, I understand, in the region of £14 million. And it's going to cost us £14 million to upgrade and make Greenock Police Station a fit for purpose site. Then I think, there would be benefit in that scenario of building a new site, which will last us another 50 or 60 years, hopefully with modern building approaches. But we're not saying that that is a definitive, it's going to close, etc. My appraisal is, when we look at the costs, I'm being realistic, it's unlikely to stack up in favour. But that's the whole purpose of the consultation. The next stages are to go away and do that cost benefit analysis, options appraisal, and all of the project activity which will take place behind that. If I may, Councillor Allen, is there anything you want to supplement in terms of my response, or something that might assist members?
I think you really covered it all, Gordon. I think, maybe just to clarify, it's not a decision to close the station. As I understand it, the consultation process is a proposal for the potential closures or relocations of stations across the country. So it's a kind of early heads up, I would suggest, and that we are intending to do a full ops appraisal of all the aspects you mentioned earlier on, to do that full cost benefit analysis and determine from that what's the most beneficial, the financial beneficial aspect.
I think that's helpful to get that clarity, because that's certainly the impression that's out there, to be perfectly honest, right? I still will come back and say, Gordon, I don't know how you can be quite as definitive as you are that that is not the best option, because you haven't done a full options appraisal, you've not looked at the cost. And the reality is, you talked about it would be many millions to refurbish. You can't put a figure on it, right? Talked about many millions to build a new. You can't really put a figure on that as well. We've done the exact same options appraisals in the past and concluded that refurbishment was probably a better option than the modernisation. So I'm reassured by the fact that the decision has not been taken to close that building, and that there's a genuine process here, consultation, and that there will be a detailed options appraisal. And we absolutely, as the scrutiny panel, need to see those detailed options that you've explored. And I think if you want us to back any proposal that you come forward with, you have to convince us through that very detailed process that the option that you'll end up proposing is the best option for this community.
Thank you. I think this exchange has been helpful. I think it does clarify. So really what you're saying to you, Superintendent, that at some stage there will be the cost of refurbishment, cost of building new, the cost of perhaps renting somewhere else. We will see probably 3 or 4 alternatives. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for your absolute assurance, this is not a gift that Police Scotland can give in isolation. The Scottish Police Authority will ask exactly these questions through the various committees and boards, and we will be required to satisfy them of the options as well. So, whilst I might have an opinion, and I'm trying to balance being entirely frank and honest and sharing my opinion with you in order to get the right outcome for communities, it will go through governance where all of these things will have to be forensically scrutinised, as I said in the statement.
That whole exchange was useful. Councillor Clougherty?
Yeah, thanks. I would draw attention to the paper itself, which actually says the building is now engaged, deteriorating, no longer fit for purpose and costly to maintain, which seems to sort of indicate that a decision has been taken to close it. So that being the first one. And my prelim, can I just say, what is the time been for policing in Clyde at the start of the year? So I think for all of us as elected members, we recognise that, it has been a tremendous amount of work done in Clyde, both in serious organised crime and in virtually violent crime as well. So I think we as a scrutiny panel always always appreciate the work has been done. So I think it's very important that we get that through to our police colleagues, and we do appreciate the amount of work that's been done. And maybe in that itself, it does show why important it is to have that police presence within Clyde. Can I just bring back to the proximity marker? I've mentioned that, which is important. Our proximity marker, and your own speech there, it's one of the things that we are worried about, and that's the custodial cells. And that is police officers moving out in the area. You can give assurances just now that if we don't get these custodial cells, we'll make adjustments. But adjustments won't be there for that particular period of time. And we all know budget pressures then change. And what is a guarantee at that point in time soon fades into memory. I think from my point of view, we've never been precious about buildings. The whole idea that Councillor Cave says is we do an options appraisal and we find the best way forward for any particular building. And we've done it for 20 years now, so the same. So we do know what we're talking about there. Our crux is what we would like to see is we don't need 50 cells, we don't need 100 cells. What we do need is 4 around cells that suits in our life. That may be a dozen. Right? It may be a dozen. But for me, that's the crux of the matter. What we say today about the promises today, if we've not got those custodial cells within our decline, the next 5, 10, 15 years, the budget pressures continue, we'll see police and we know the reasons why. So my input would be what we're doing, we need those custodial stories.
Thank you. I don't know if there's a question there. I think it was a statement of intent.
I suppose the question is, it does indicate that the station is closing. The paragraph is quite clear that the station is no longer fit and is now engaged in heating. Now, obviously, a facelift can change all that, but your indication in your own paper seems to lead us to the idea that the station is closing, and that's really where it has to go.
Councillor Law.
It's Sandra. Are you going to come back?
Would you mind, Chair?
Oh, you're going to, sorry.
Thank you. Just to give some assurance, address those points. So firstly and foremost, my thanks to you for recognising the work of officers, and you see this week just some significant recoveries in terms of serious organised crime and drugs cultivations and associated arrests, etc. So thank you for recognising that, as we tried to as well. I think we share a collective desire to maintain a custody provision. That's first and foremost what my aim is as Divisional Commander. In honesty, you know, capital budget being what it is, I strongly believe that's what the organisation wants, but we also have to be realistic. I will continue to advocate, as will you, I'm sure, for a custody provision, because it's my officers and staff that are affected first, and then also the communities, etc. So, an assurance, I will continue to advocate for that, and that will be the first thing I ask for, as opposed to defaulting to, well, give us more officers, because as you say, that can naturally be eroded, and I understand that. Lastly, in terms of the language within the consultation, it just goes to show you the importance of language, but I just read it as a statement of fact, as in development is towards end of life, as opposed to a statement of intent. It'd be unrealistic for me to say that's going to stand the test of time without significant investment. But I'm no structural engineer, I'm a police officer, and I've done that for 28 years. I'm not qualified to say anything other than that. So it's a statement of fact as opposed to a statement of intent.
Okay, Councillor Law?
Ready.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. Just a comment, there is a question in it as well. Your presentations and the questions and discussions up to now have answered most of my concerns. After consultations, I'm leaping forward here, right? After consultation, should the decision be to close the current station, then you had briefly alluded to in your presentation co-location. Both the fire service and the police service in this chamber have stated that they have a strong interest in plans for emergency services hub for fire, police and ambulance. You also stated that if closure takes place, then that would not be for at least 18 months. That passes quickly. We all know that, and we would imagine that in 18 months maybe this still isn't settled, or budgets haven't been settled, or for how much is spent in capital. So nothing happens quickly. So in those options, would you be looking at some kind of hub, considering that, yes, that is a long way off, that is a big investment, but future-proofing is really important?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I know I've spoken to David, he's online from the fire service. I guess there are operational benefits of co-location for emergency services. There are financial benefits, economic benefits, and I guess as services continue to integrate and collaborate, the benefits are there for everyone to see. Nothing is off the table. So, I can't sit here and say we want to do that because actually in my heart of hearts, I really like the concept. And I'm confident that, I don't want to speak on his behalf, that David probably feels the same. We can see benefits. Fire also co-locate with ambulance quite often, and some of our smaller sites, I believe, in other parts of the country, there have been co-locations with other emergency services. What we're talking about in this area, because of the number of officers and the demographics and the challenges of quite a significant community, is the next level in honesty. So it's got to be considered, but we are very much at the behest of others and their ability to invest as well. So yes, it's on the table.
Thank you.
You okay with that?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor McCluskey?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Chief Superintendent, for your openness today, but also your openness up to this point, and the briefings, and also some of the statements you made online. A lot like Councillor McCabe, I've got a few linked questions depending on the answers that you give to these. Just first, given your experience both in the custody division and now as the divisional commander, what would you say the minimum required cell provision in Inverclyde would be, and what would you be looking for if you were advocating for that?
Well, how to put me on the spot there, thank you. So, whilst I was the divisional commander, you would imagine I was maybe not into the operational detail at every site across every location. But as you might expect, I did a little bit of homework in advance of this session. So I think on average we see 13 and a half, there is no such thing as a half person, but 13 and a half statistically people in custody on a daily basis. Now, without having a look at each of those individual statistics, a chunk of them will be from Paisley or Renfrewshire as an area, as opposed to from Inverclyde. Some of the work that we would look to do in advance, and actually I had discussions when I was in that role previously, was to try and analyse across the whole of Scotland how far people were travelling to custody centres and where they were arrested, etc. And that actually requires a lot more work than you might think with the systems that we're operating currently. So that would require to be done. Do I think the crux of the matter is, do I think we need 57 cells? No. I think if you look at the custody, the arrests across Scotland, 150,000 people, I think, were being arrested 6, 7, 8 years ago. But we now have the Criminal Justice Scotland Act, which enshrines in law the presumption of liberty. So therefore, we see the numbers of arrested people on an annual basis down to between 97,000 and 100,000 people every year. So the need and the demand is reducing. We're also trying to use direct measures far more, which I think, whilst it's been labelled soft justice in a number of newspapers, it's approved by the Lord Advocate, and it's actually a really good alternative to taking people into custody, criminalising them in appropriate circumstances, and that's the key to effective use. So, do I think we need 57 cells? No. Would I like to do more work on it? Yes. Would some interim position be an option? Yes. As in a smaller cell provision.
So we've got 57 at the moment. I think you said at the moment there's about 30 operational. And if I'm listening to what you're saying there, you're saying there's probably at least 13 cells. So we'd be looking for a 30 cell provision.
Yeah, again, this is the importance of the detail and operational activity, because if you were to divert the Paisley arrests to Glasgow, where there was a more substantial provision, and actually it's far closer for them to go to Glasgow, so therefore there'll be benefits for those communities, then actually, we might be less than that, we might be talking about 10. But I give those numbers as indications, they're not commitments or saying that's the right number. We'll need to go and look at it, and that's the need for the options appraisal.
In terms of the mitigation, that's what you would likely advocate for. Now, just in terms of that mitigation, obviously you said that no decisions have been taken and you would be looking to mitigate, but just in terms of that information to the public piece, and as you said, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation out there at the moment. So just so that we can get a few things just clear and on the record, is it the case that if we didn't have custody provision in Inverclyde, that the arresting officer is responsible for watching prisoners who need to be watched and also taking prisoners to hospital, and therefore we could end up with Inverclyde officers in Clydebank or Glasgow or at the RAH or at the Vale of even with a prisoner?
Yes, you're very close to the detail there. So, whilst it might not necessarily be the arresting officer, the presumption is it's an officer from the division where the arrest was made.
Yeah.
So,
yes. And it would be true to assume then that an officer could spend their entire shift out of Inverclyde in that scenario.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Turning to drink and drunk driving offences now. Obviously, minutes count in terms of evidence collection. Were we to not have a custody suite or custody provision in Inverclyde and someone was picked up for a drug or drink driving offence in Inverclyde, do you think there'd be an increased risk that the evidence would not be reliable if someone just happened to be transported to either Glasgow or Clydebank?
So in respect to drug driving, not particularly, trucks stay within the system for a significant amount of time. So these maps and minutes are not going to be something I've known, in my opinion, as a police officer, maybe not a medical expert. But in terms of drink driving, perhaps not as much as you might assume, because we do have appropriate processes. And in other parts of Scotland, officers will travel for a couple of hours in order for people to be processed in Highlands and Islands, etc., on some limited occasions. So I don't think it's as big an issue as you believe, but it would need to be worked through. The other thing that is being looked at nationally is something which would still provide a local provision. And this is still late in this discussion, but where we would have the ability to take people to local police stations where we knew they weren't of high risk, we knew they weren't likely to stay with us. And that would again reduce travelling time. That's something that's happening anyway, not as part of this.
Great, thank you very much. And very final question, we talked about relationships between various public bodies and co-location and that kind of thing. What discussions have taken place so far with the Scottish Courts and Tribunal Service about the impact on Greenwich Sheriff Court in relation to these changes? And by that, I don't just mean the transfer of prisoners, but also, for example, the induction of evidence in court.
So I'm not sure what discussions have taken place with the Criminal Justice Services Division, because they are the national division which engages most with the Scottish Court and Tribunal Service. What I can tell you is I've discussed it personally with the Sheriff Principal for there. Just as a courtesy, we've not discussed it in great detail. But the reality is Scotland is slowly shifting towards a model of virtual courts. And I've said this as a matter of public record in various conferences when I was commander in the Criminal Justice Services Division. This outdated fashion or this outdated practice that we have of throwing human beings in caged vehicles and transporting them to court because it's convenient as opposed to appearing on a modern virtual link is something which has to and will change.
Totally agree with that in terms of the intent, but given the time scales you've outlined yourself in terms of 18 months, it's probably still a long way to go in terms of the Courts and Tribunal Service to modernise. Thank you very much for that. Thanks.
Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chief Superintendent, I'll preface just before I say what I'm going to say that this isn't a direct criticism of you, because I understand that how this consultation has been handled is not within your control. But I think you all within this panel and indeed this council would agree that Police Scotland's handling this consultation hasn't been anything short of shambolic. Coming out and saying that you were planning on closing an entire police office and a custody suite with no detailed alternative, I think significantly harmed public trust and confidence in policing in Inverclyde. And I do firmly think that the Chief Constable was not just an apology to the people of Inverclyde for that, but indeed to many of your frontline officers who were also been affected by this as well. But in terms of trying to repair that public trust locally, what do you intend to do?
Thank you. I'm genuinely sorry to feel that way. That's what any service, the intent is always good. I think I've demonstrated my intent, my own approach. So, Councillor, in terms of 4 days after that consultation, realising the local impact, we held drop-in sessions for not only police officers and staff who are affected by this, and actually elected members, MPs, MSPs. Some attended, some didn't, but the invite was there. I held similar sessions for the other half of my responsibility in terms of infrastructure. I personally engage quite frequently in my own time on my own on my commander's Twitter account to try and remedy and address concerns, to engage with officers, to engage with members of the public, to engage with councillors at off-table meetings. So, whilst I appreciate your preface in terms of not being a personal criticism, I'm entirely comfortable that I am doing all I can within the hours I have and the capacity I have to try and assure the communities. And that's why I'm so keen and so pleased to have this genuine, open, honest discussion. Because it might have been assumed that I'll sit here and say some long words and platitudes around we'll manage without a custody provision, when actually that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I will be advocating for a custody provision. So I hope, unless you wish to counter, I hope I am doing my best, and I hope that I'm doing my best to try and address it locally for communities.
Thank you for that, Chief Superintendent. I appreciate the candour that you've had and the honesty you've brought here today. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there is closure of custody facilities within K Division, that will leave K Division being the only division in Scotland without custody facilities. Would that be right?
Give me 1 minute.
Sure.
Before I commit to this, because it's an important. Yes, I think you're right.
Thanks for that. That's something that was shared with your colleagues in the Police Federation there, I understand as well.
I do think it's incredibly important though to take away geographic boundaries which we make up. And you know, I'll use a different or a similar comparison which will be understood locally. The custody suite which serves Argyll and Bute is Clydebank. But it's quicker for them to come here. And that's the benefit of being a national service. We are not inhibited by these local boundaries. So, whilst I'm not saying it would be right for us not to have custody provision, it shouldn't be an assumption that because we are a division which serves the boundaries that we've made up, we must have custody provision, because it's a national provision delivered by a national function. So, whilst you're right, and I do believe we should have a custody provision, it's not the starting point that every division should have one.
Okay, so you've obviously before in your statement you highlighted the impact this is going to have on service delivery, the loss of a custody facility, within this division, and I know that's those concerns have been shared by your colleagues in the Police Federation, indeed a number of former senior police officers that live within Inverclyde, including one of our former area commanders, Debbie Riley, and Debbie had rightly highlighted that this is going to be the case that if we lose the custody facilities, it is going to lead to a significant number of police officers being out without Inverclyde transporting prisoners to a custody facility, and indeed it will deprive the public of a visible police presence potentially for lengthy periods of time. Because obviously the reality is that a number of people potentially in your custody are more than likely vulnerable and volatile. Having them cuffed in transit for larger journeys is not just a risk to them, but also to your officers. And all of that has a cumulative impact, adds on to the pressure on a number of already stretched custody staff, which is going to obviously lead to increased waiting times at custody facilities to process prisoners. So with that in mind, we are going to lose officers for significant periods of time, as Councillor McCluskey just highlighted, potentially for the whole shift. So how are you going to be able to ensure that there's still cover within Inverclyde? Because it's been rightly highlighted by a number of people that police, Scotland is stretched, as it is with policing numbers, and I know concerns have been raised by your colleagues in the Policing Federation with this.
I think, Councillor Cassidy, you're talking about the comments by former police officers, and I'd be quite honest with you, I think some of it has been alarmist. I agree with what the Chief Superintendent said at the beginning. There has been some alarmist comments within the press, but I will allow the Chief Superintendent to answer that.
Very magnanimous of you, Chair.
Thank you. So I don't think I've in any way sought to mislead the committee. I think I've been quite open and honest in terms of saying that there would be an obstruction. I've talked about travel time, observations, hospitals, etc. So there is no getting away from that, and I wouldn't seek to sit here and give you those long words and platitudes. And what I'm saying is that it will need to form part of an appraisal option. So one would be we replicate a site with 57 cells, perhaps. I personally think that would be both unaffordable and unnecessary. But do we look at a consideration which is of smaller nature, more proportionate to today's rates of arrests and the changes in the criminal justice system, etc.? Yes, absolutely. Is that the first thing that I would like? Absolutely. But at the minute we're seeing Paisley officers travelling around here being distracted from communities. So, we will also look to have them go to sites closer in the future. So that would afford us maybe a smaller site going forward. We will need to work through all of this. But my aim, and I think it was clear in my statement, I hope that, my apologies if it wasn't, my aim as Divisional Commander is to advocate to ensure that communities are not adversely affected, and to ensure that if there is the scenario, which is not my preferred scenario, and there is no cell provision, then we have to have an officer uplift, and perhaps supported by a commitment in terms of officer numbers. That is, in my opinion, the least or less desirable outcome, and actually I'm advocating for that. I'm violent agreement on this.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. You are obviously clearly going to need more officers, to cover, the ones who are out, and that's definitely backed by your colleagues in the Police Federation. My other question might not actually be necessarily for you to answer, maybe your colleagues in the States. Councillor McCabe highlighted the need for an options appraisal. I know my understanding is you haven't carried out an options appraisal yet. So when that is carried out, will you put that in the public domain so that the public can clearly see the options appraisal and how you came to the decision?
I'll invite Alan to come in.
Thanks for your comments. Yeah, absolutely. But at the start of that process, we are currently starting to pull together a number of options and to assess all these aspects to create that full and detailed ops review. We will look to ensure that this committee and the wider public remain informed about the optics of the outcomes of that report. How that will be shared maybe be for consideration, but we do ensure that yourselves and the public will be informed.
Thank you. I don't think that was quite a yes answer to that options appraisal be put in the public, and I think I appreciate you taking this back, that absolutely should be put in the public domain, because the public should clearly get to see how you came to that decision.
I think this might be semantics. I will be at the committee, and naturally I will update everybody. But the papers which go to the Scottish Police Authority are public papers as well. So in all likelihood, these papers will be in the public domain by proxy in any case. So, whilst we don't know what that will look like going forward, because we're trying to predict the future, I'm confident we will keep up to date. And if you're not content with that, as Councillor McCabe said, this is a scrutiny committee, and you can ask me difficult questions, and I'll do my best to answer them and revisit that internally.
Okay, thanks for that.
Oh yes, I'm sure we'll see you back again, Chief Superintendent. Again, I'd just like to thank you for you and your team coming along. I know I'm about to say something. Thank you and your team for coming along. Unfortunately, I need to leave, and I shall ask my deputy, the Provost, to sit in this chair to chair it through to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, Provost. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, thanks. You'll be glad to know that we're almost getting to the end. So I want to really start off by saying, our role here is to scrutinise, and I mention this fairly frequently, like it's scrutinising and not criticising individual officers or our staff. We are really appreciative of all our emergency services and the great work they're doing. It's really been noted. So we're scrutinising and not criticising. I think it's really important to say that, but thanks for coming along and being scrutinised. I hope you've taken it as scrutiny and not criticism. So I think we've had a discussion about the police station closing, and I think it's clear, because you've already mentioned the reason for that: health and safety reasons, staff working in that facility, members of the public and the staff, and that's the priority, make sure they're safe and you meet your statutory duties in terms of health and safety. So I think we're all realistic that, the reasons why the police station has to, you're looking at it and why it has to close. But obviously, because these are serious concerns, then we're realistic to know that probably will mean closure. So if it's not meeting standards, then clearly there must come to a point where, we're in the lockets and we need to look at it as a matter of urgency. So we're in, dealing with those kind of decisions to the council in terms of budgets and everything else. We're used to doing what we talk here about delivering differently. But we're always clear that delivering differently means that we get a sort of like for like. It might look different, but we do not lose a service, or it might even improve because it becomes more modern and everything else. So we're all realistic with those things. But it's when we start getting into nitty-gritty, and I'm reluctant to get into the nitty-gritty because we really don't know what the future's going to look, so it's really uncertain. So for us, we're uncertain. But when we start talking about replacing physical assets with resources, and then we know the way the resources go, they're always under review, that once that physical asset goes
and it's replaced with resources, we really don't have any assurance that those resources will stay forever. And the fact that the physical asset closed a number of years ago kind of gets lost some way. So we're still nervous, but as I say, I'll not go into we've talked about the custody suite and things. If we are delivering differently, make sure that it's not a detriment, and going into that, but I think it's probably not the time and it's too early. Really, because we do not have the detail. You know, and I think, you know, talking about being alarmist and misinformation, the problem we've got is when there's lack of information, people fill in the gaps. And that's where we get misinformation. So really, you know, as we've said before, this option appraisal is really important, because we know that we're fighting for a service to remain like for like, and we're happy to deliver a little differently, and we're hoping it's going to be better. But we don't. So for us, as, you know, spokespeople for the public, we really need to say, you know, so we're sitting our hand up saying we're concerned because we don't see the information. So at this stage we can. So once we do that option appraisal, so I'm concerned that we're consulting on something's closing, and you're consulting on, and we as Scrutiny are saying, we know something's closing, but we don't know what the options are. So it's very difficult for us as a consultation team. I'm really concerned that consultation isn't going to be asking the public an opinion. You know, all we're saying is you're closing something, but be assured that you're going to get something in its place. But we don't know what that something is, and we're asking you to be your step. So the responses will be alarmist, because it's like we don't see it. So I would actually plead that actually we do another consultation where we actually know what we're consulting on. So just, we need to close, we need to review most people, and it's great to see that our community are behind it, you've filled that in, you know, so we do have a really strong community with lots of strong voices. So my concern is we don't hear those strong voices, so we'll actually see what we consult on. You know, does this deliver, will this deliver differently, will it improve, will it become more modern, and will be better for everyone? And that is the start and everyone else in the mix. So, so my plea is, and there's a question just I'm pleased that those who can answer this for really how are we going to consult with the public once we actually know what we're consulting?
Thanks, Councillor Quinn. Before I go back to Chief Superintendent, Councillor McCluskey, you want to come back in?
I think it overlapped with Lynn's questions.
Right. Chief Superintendent?
Thanks. If I might invite Davina to pass some comment on the consultation and engagement going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Gordon. Yeah, thanks. It's been really interesting to hear the feedback on the engagement and consultation. So my role in Police Scotland is to lead public colleague community engagement for the service. So what we've set up for our state transformation going forwards is an ongoing engagement and consultation plan to keep the public, communities and stakeholders engaged and involved. So completely appreciate the points that you've made about information about the consultation, the way it's been designed. The first phase of the consultation engagement has been designed in a way to keep everyone cited and engaged at the outset. So the questions, we've included the information that is available and that's factual to us at the moment. But the questions in the consultation themselves are very open-ended to get a sense from the public and stakeholders of their concerns and questions that they might have. So we've got quite a lot of good qualitative feedback that we can feedback to the local police commander and state colleagues as well as to our executive team. So my team analyse that feedback every week and send a report to the Estates Core project team that goes to the executive as well. So we've seen that live real-time insight from communities, colleagues and stakeholders. But the first phase of the consultation is to gauge a sense of the importance of the site to the local community and what concerns and feedback and questions they've got, because the news is out in the media, so we want to keep communities close and engaged, similar to what we did during COVID as well, just to ensure that we can understand communities' needs so that will help us to shape our responses and feedback. But the intention is, in terms of the engagement with our ongoing estates across the country, is to that will be an ongoing conversation, and we've started that conversation. Our online engagement hub, which we've opened specifically, we've dedicated a site specifically for all the estates proposals on our citizen space platform, which is on our external website, and public, anyone will be able to go back onto that platform at any time to see updates in terms of the next steps and how everybody's feedback and views are being taken forward and considered in the decision-making process. But also importantly, the results of the engagement will be, when the consultations have completed during this phase, will be fully publicised on that website as well. So that's our approach to our public engagement, and that's, we've got a strategic outcome and commitment in keeping the public and communities and stakeholders engaged and involved, so they do have public confidence and trust in what we do. Just to mention as well, in addition to the estates consultation, we have continuous local surveys that we carry out all of the time to measure public confidence and trust at a local level, and also to gauge real-time feedback again from local communities. Anybody at any time can participate in those online surveys on our engagement hub, the same platform as the estates, to give us their local concerns, what they expect and need from their local police service. So we've been running that live continuous survey for the last 3 years now, and that will continue. We also have user experience surveys as well, where we contact people that have contacted and used the local police service, and we take them through a series of questions about their experience and satisfaction with that service. So I just wanted to make you aware of other engagement mechanisms that we have in place locally to continue to measure public confidence and trust and enable us to act on that and embed in our local police plans.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Roberts and then Councillor McCabe, Chief Superintendent, you mentioned earlier, to go back to the custody suites, you mentioned earlier the joint working that you were receptive of, particularly the fire service. But is there any mileage in joint working with the Scottish Prison Service, with perhaps the erection of a custody suite within the confines of Gateside Prison, which would be a local solution here? Is that feasible whatsoever?
So it's not something we've looked at directly, because, as you would understand, the prison estate has a different legal status as to police custody in terms of the law and the conditions which people are kept in, etc. It's a very different entity. As I understand it, and I don't have a detailed knowledge of the local prison site, but I think it's quite tight for space. We need access. I think it would work against one another. But it's not to say it should be discounted. So yes, we can pick up.
Okay, Councillor Robertson.
Thanks very much, Chair. We had many questions that we wanted to ask when we came in the door this morning, and it is heartening to know that through your extensive response and comments at the beginning of the meeting that those questions were answered, and we were able to kind of square most of them off. So thank you. By listening to what you said and hearing what you're saying, we feel that we've got answers to a lot of the questions that we came in with. So thank you for that, first of all. Maybe let you guys be at ease for a minute, and I'll direct a question to our officers here, because I'm looking at the actual paper that we are looking at today in terms of our response to consultation. A lot of the things that we are intending to say are that we don't know, or that we don't have enough information, or we neither agree nor disagree. And I raised concerns about this when we had our private briefing, that if we have this one-time response that is predicated on don't knows and don't neither agree nor disagrees because of when in the process we drafted the response, and if it is truly a one-time response to this consultation, then I don't know how helpful it is coming from us as a significant partner organisation to you guys as police officers locally. Given that we're not necessarily pressed for time in terms of putting a response in, and that this response was drafted prior to this conversation, which has been really useful across many aspects of provision and how things go forward today, is it possible for us to revisit this? Because I certainly have more information than I had an hour and a half ago, and I'm just wondering if this is the right time and the right response to the consultations on behalf of us as an organisation.
So that's up to yourselves as a scrutiny panel. I can give you the timelines for when the panel starts. We've got the actual scrutiny panel for Port Glass. The submission for Port Glass was the 18th of February, and the scrutiny panel is the 8th of February. 28th of March is the following scrutiny panel, and the submission for Green is the 31st of March. And of course, we've got scrutiny panels beyond that. That would be the 31st of July. So it would be possible to not put in a submission the panel's decision. What I would add is I think the points that have been raised today are probably in our submission. I don't know if you want to read the submissions in that light. I'm not hearing anything new that's been brought, other than the fact that an options appraisal rather than the definitive closure of Green Police Station will be taking place. I think that's a new piece of information that perhaps we hadn't considered, but it's up to yourselves as a panel.
Thank you. Ms Winks, Councillor McKay.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really commenting on that point, but I will now, because I mean, I genuinely don't think anything has been said today that fundamentally changes the basis of our response. I don't have any difficulty personally in continuing such a response to the standing meeting of the panel. But the reality is we've been provided with verbal information here today. We've not been provided with written information. We've got a written report before us outlining everything that was said verbally today, giving us a detailed options appraisal. And it won't be the only opportunity, because the expectation will be we'll be having more meetings as a panel, the opportunity to discuss the issue on an ongoing basis. But the absolute expectation would be when that option appraisal is completed and a report is produced, it should come before this panel. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, it should come before this panel. And just two other points I did want to raise. The first one was around custody provision. I understand the point that the divisional commander makes around boundaries, geographical boundaries, and not necessarily every division should have a custody suite. But if Renfrewshire and Inverclyde is going to have a custody suite, it should be in Greenock, right? The second biggest town in the division is at the west, 20 miles from Glasgow. Paisley, the biggest town in the division, is a few minutes from Govan. So the reality is there is a need for a custody providing in Inverclyde, maybe not 57 cells, but there's a need for a custody provision in Inverclyde. So I'm just reinforcing that point that you accept, Divisional Commander, and others have made. But just before we finish and forget about Port Glasgow, I'm a Port Glasgow man, so obviously cannot forget about Port Glasgow. The reality is Port Glasgow Police Office was closed many years ago. It was closed to the public, and then it was used as a muster point. And then it was closed as a muster point. It was closed because we had a big police station in Greenock, which allegedly was more suitable for officers to travel to. But that's a done deal. The thing that's not a done deal is essentially now what happens. So what I'm asking is that before you put it on the market, that you explore the option of a community asset transfer. There may not be any community interest in that building, but you should at least explore that as an option before you put it on the market.
Thank you, Councillor McKay. Before I go back to Chief Superintendent, Councillor Quinn, do you want to go back?
Yeah, it's just to go back on one point. So I think it's great that we've got our local press here. So if it is a one and only chance to fill in a consultation, I would please be every member of the public to fill that in and make sure that their views are known and potential what their options and what it would look like definitely is detailed in that consultation, and I'll look forward to seeing the options appraisal in the future.
Thank you. I'll go back to Chief Superintendent.
Thanks. I said it in my remarks, but I do appreciate it's a long statement. But genuinely enthused by the engagement so far, and it is a testament to the commitment to community and passion for local community here. So love it if more people fed in with their genuine thoughts, concerns from a subjective perspective, ideally, and we will absolutely take that away and listen to it. Just lastly, in relation to Port Glasgow, because you're absolutely right, I did say that I'm focused on Greenock. There would be a process where we would consider what the disposal options look like. I understand that community asset is also in conjunction with the council, but I'm certainly no expert in that space. But for your absolute assurance, yes, we would endeavour to do the right thing for everybody, and options will be looked at.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent. Members, the recommendations in front of us today is that the panel approves the proposed response to national consultation and local consultation on the police on Port Glasgow and the local consultation on Greenock Police Station. Can we agree these recommendations?
And again, I'm going back to my comments. I'm not sure that we can. I think this was all done prior to most of the substantive discussion that we've had regarding the matter, and I'm wondering if it can be. I would like to propose that we do take it to the next standing meeting of the Police and Fire Scrutiny Committee.
Is there anything in particular in any of the responses that you are opposed to, or think there should be an additional?
I may be completely stupid about this, right? I look at that first page, and every single one of these is a want. I want, and I don't know what I'm answering here. Somebody explain it to me if you want, but I would agree with all these things, that we want these, and I want to put agree in everything, but what am I actually answering? Am I answering the way things are just now, or the way things are going to be, which we don't really know? So I'm completely struggling with that page. Oh.
No, I think Ross is going to help.
It was just to say, on that front page, that's about the response to the national strategy. The objectives in Scotland are met by that strategy. So it's not about the local.
But again, I don't have the information to do that. I want to agree with all of them. I think they're all a must. I think they're all something which you should aspire to. But I struggle with the information that I've got to see whether I do or not. And if we pass this, I am depending on people who know better than me or understand it better than me to pass it.
I mean, there are three consultations here, right? So the national strategy is aspirational, right? What we need to measure, whatever the proposed option for Greenock is against the national strategy, right? How did it go deliver? Because we talked in this meeting about potential coordination with different public service organisations. The outcome of this process may not be that. It may be an option that's not as good as that. We can assess whatever proposal against the national strategy. And the fundamental issue is the police and the fire service, or the police and any other service, can look complicated if the funding's there to build a new joint service facility. And we could look at co-location between certain council services and the police like we have in the past. Looked at the potential of bringing the police into this building, looked at warden services co-locating with the police in the past. These type of options may be options, but you can only deliver it if you get the funding to deliver. So I fundamentally don't see a need for us to continue, but in the spirit of partnership and cooperation and trying to get consensus, I'm happy for it to continue to the next meeting. But if any members have got concerns about the draft as it stands, please feed those comments and concerns to the officers who can produce a revised draft for the next meeting. Yeah, there is an absolute imperative for us to finalise our response today. We can continue to the standing meeting, but absolutely, we've had lots of useful information here today, but we've not had a plan presented to us. We've not had an options appraisal presented. We do not know what the alternative to the refurbishment of Greenock Police Station is.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McCabe. Yeah, the situation.
Thanks for bringing it back in. And I think that's precisely my point. If we're asked to respond to a consultation to be helpful to our partners without the options of what can be looked at and what we're actually looking at, then it's really, really hard to see what purpose, what you like. I've spent much of my prior professional life developing surveys and communications and trying to get answers from people for, and when you ask a question, the basic thing you have to ask is, what do you want to get from it? What do you want to actually be able to have as substantial information in order to tell you anything? And I don't know what we're telling our police colleagues. And I think if we were able to, between now and the next standing meeting, have more information in terms of that, we would be more helpful as a partner, because we are not just an individual responding here, we're an entire organisation trying to make a substantial response. I think that's the only point I'm making. And I don't think I'm going against what Councillor McKeary said about there not being an option appraisal. I think it's all part of the same situation.
Yeah, we can only respond to the consultation that's presented. We can't respond to something that we don't have. So, as I said, by all means, if members have got other views, to feed into officers come back there, but we're not going to have we don't know. We could, and the reality is, we could say in a response, what we want is a brand new police station built from scratch, which co-locates with the fire service and other public service. We want that in Greenock or somewhere in Inverclyde. We want that built, irrespective of the cost of that, etc. Right? We can aspire to that and say that, but I don't necessarily think that's going to serve much purpose either. So as I said, I'm perfectly happy with the response. If it needs tweaked, it can get tweaked, etc. Continue on, but we can only respond to the consultations presented for us. And I don't want to rehearse what Councillor Cassidy said, but the reality is, it hasn't been particularly, and I've said that to the divisional commander directly, it hasn't been handled well at a national level by Police Scotland.
Yeah, I think we look upon this as a first stage, and the response has been put forward, and nobody has suggested anything here today that adds to the response that we have at this initial stage. And therefore, I would propose that we agree these responses at this time, because this is only the first stage. We'll go forward. Can we agree that, members?
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about this. But what's the next stage? What is the next consultation opportunity, like formal consultation opportunity that we would have? You know, if this is our one chance to kind of comment on this issue that is both a national concern and also has impacts locally, then I want it to be as full and complete and helpful as it possibly can be.
What we have in front of us here today is that the panel approves the proposed response. Now, we either approve this proposed response or you come forward with something else, a different response that you want to put forward to the meeting and present that to the panel.
I do. I do.
That's okay.
Just, I think we need to understand our role as a scrutiny panel. When Police Scotland was created and the police force were abolished, these scrutiny panels were set up in the 32 local authority areas with a legal duty to scrutinise, not make decisions, to be scrutinised. So the division commander is required to come here before this scrutiny panel and be scrutinised, as is the chief fire officer. So the reality is that there is a legal duty on something as fundamental as this to come before the scrutiny panel for scrutiny as part of the process that leads to the decision. So absolutely, there will be a requirement for a report to come here in due course once the consultation is completed, once the option appraisal is completed, with Police Scotland presenting to this scrutiny panel the proposals that they intend to take forward through their own internal decision-making process. So we will be discussing this matter again, and at that point we will have something concrete to actually take a view on.
Yeah, are you happy with that, Councillor?
Well, I'm not really, because I don't think this is substantial at all. I don't think it's telling anybody anything, but I don't think I'm going to get anywhere with this any further. So let's just pass it and let it go. That's fine.
Through you, Chair, just really for clarity, we have a motion to approve the recommendation of the report, and I need to be absolutely clear about whether or not Councillor Robertson wants
to. It doesn't seem as if there's any point, but let's just pass it forward one that really tells nobody anything. That's fine.
Can we therefore agree the recommendation? I would thank the representatives of Police Scotland who have attended today. It's been a most useful session, and I would thank the officers for the preparation for this meeting and thank members for their attendance. Thank you.
Apologies for my coughing.